I want to go to something away from politics now, and that's the hype from the government and greenies about electric vehicles. Well, they seem to be hitting a bit of a roadblock here. I'm talking about electric vehicle rollout. Now, much of the focus this year has rightly been on Chris Bowen's disastrous electric vehicle target, which had to be seriously wound back after nearly every sector, I think, of the automotive industry said, well, it's not going to happen. But then there's also the infrastructure itself. Now, I've talked about this many times before. This is the infrastructure needed to recharge these things, which is now itself in serious doubt of being ready in the timeframe the government would like. Now, just the other week, the chief executive of Ampol, a bloke by the name of Matt Halliday, revealed that the company's timetable to actually install fast charging stations at Ampol petrol stations has drifted from 6 months to 18 months. For more on this issue, which is going to dominate headlines over the next couple of years, I'm joined by senior motoring journalist Paul Gover. Paul, great to see you again. I want to talk first about if you're in the market. If you're in the market for an electric vehicle, would you buy one today?
Absolutely not. I would not even consider it. And I say that as somebody who drives almost all of the ones that are available. And there are a whole lot of reasons, not least the fact that major brands have been slashing prices and resale values are through the floor.
Talk about resale values. I heard a talkback caller today on Melbourne radio who said that he's got a 6-year-old Tesla. He wants to either upgrade it or get out of it. He went to a car yard, Paul, and you'd be familiar with these problems. He went to a car yard and the bloke said, look, I'm not going to give you a trade-in on that. I'll put it here on consignment and see if anyone wanders in as silly enough to buy it. That must be a common thing that's now happening.
Well, I'm good mates with one of the biggest dealer groups in Sydney, the boss of that, and they have a company policy that they don't trade electric cars. I asked him why, and he said the problem is not valuing the car now, it's valuing the car to the third owner, because it's going to be the third owner who runs into the area where there's a lot of concern about what is the cost of replacing the batteries and how do the batteries last. So like all these things, what you're buying it for is what you're going to sell it for, and what you're going to sell it for, that person is already looking at what they're going to sell it for, and the values are not good.
I'll get to the infrastructure in a moment. The whole scene's changing rapidly, and I've heard you a couple of times on radio talking about this, where you've now got the market is about to be flooded with Chinese electric vehicles. Now, as far as I can work out, they're being sold here cheaper than they're being sold in places like the US and Europe. What are the Chinese up to with this sudden huge numbers of electric vehicles being shipped to Australia?
Well, it's not just electric vehicles, it's vehicles generally. China has identified Australia, as the South Koreans did and as the Japanese did. It's a very good test market because we're like a mini version of the USA. So lots of people do their test marketing here. The other thing is nobody can get to the bottom of what the actual free FOB cost of one of these Chinese vehicles is at the port. There's all sorts of talk about below-the-line subsidies on things like energy costs for vehicles that are exported. So we don't know what the real price is, but when the Chinese brands can start a price fight like they have just recently, and in fact, Tesla, because most of the Tesla sold here are made in China, what's the real price of these things? The other problem is if you've just bought a new Tesla and 6 months later they drop the retail price by $7,000, you've got to ask yourself what's going on. But by my count, there'll be 5 or 6 extra new Chinese brands on Australian soil selling here before the end of the year. And I've got a long-term forecast for a mate of mine who's worked for a long time as an importer. He said there could be 40 or 50 Chinese brands here by the turn of the decade.
We're already overrepresented in the number of the different types of vehicles we can buy. Just concentrate on one of these things, the BYD EV, $50,000.
Yeah.
Any good?
Yep. It's okay. Is it any good? Look, there are... Well, the thing about it is it's a transport module. For people who just want a transport module and are looking to do something electric, it's okay. But the fact of the matter is, we don't know what the reliability of these things will be like in Australia. We don't know what the quality is going to be like. I can tell you lots and lots of cases. Just one small thing. UV light in Australia is one of the very highest anywhere in the world, even higher than Dubai and the Middle East. And it breaks down the paint. Now, we haven't had these cars here long enough to know if they understand what their paint's got to put up with, what are the interiors got to put up with. And that's without worrying about the potholes that seem to be breeding all across Australia at the moment. Every second day I get a note from somebody who's just had a flat tyre from a pothole somewhere in the country. We don't know how these cars are going to cope.